Hi, I'm Misty from the Plushie class. If we haven't met yet, I am so glad that you're here. Come and join me today while we talk about head gussets and how you can make one too.
I love plushies with big heads and little bodies. I just think they are so cute. Although I showed my daughter what I was planning and she thought the head was too big. So maybe I'm just getting old, but this is what we're doing and I can always adjust it later if she's right. Before any pattern work happens, I always start with the silhouette. At least a side view, and with more complicated animals, a front view too. The silhouette is our blueprint, and every measurement I take and every pattern piece I draft gets checked against this drawing, which means I'm working towards a specific goal rather than guessing as I go. That's really is the whole point of starting here. So here I am. I drew this in pencil first, but then I thought, you probably can't see that on camera very well. So I traced back over it in marker. Now let's focus on this head. This head is very round. And when a head is this round, drafting directly from the side profile gives you a triangle when you stuff it, not a circle. So instead, we're building a sphere from gore pieces. And here's how that works. When making a sphere, you can use as many gore pieces as you want. But looking at my silhouette and where I want the seam lines to land, 4 gore pieces makes the most sense. We'll do 2 in the front and 2 for the back. Here are my measurements: 5 inches from front to back on the side view, and then 6 inches top to bottom, and 7 inches wide when we view it from the front. That's not a perfect circle. A perfect circle would be the same in all directions. The conflict really lies in the fact that my side view is 5 inches, but my front view is 7. So here's what I'm going to do. I'll use the 5-inch measurement for my width and the 6-inch measurement for my height to draft the gore shape. The extra 2 inches we need to reach 7 inches wide, we're going to add that to the gusset. We do need a little math here, but I just asked Google. So he told me that the circumference of a 5-inch circle is 17.7 inches. We're going to divide that by 4 and we get 3.9 inches. But let's round it to 4 so it's easy. That's the width of our gore. The circumference of a 6-inch circle is 18.9 inches. Once again, let's round to make our life easy. It's to 19. We're going to divide that by 2 and we get 9.5 inches. And that is the height of our gore. Ideally, you'd use a compass to draw the curve between those two measurements because it should be a true arc of a circle to be 100% accurate. But as you can see, my compass wasn't big enough for this head. So I'm eyeballing it. It will be fine, probably. But do as I say, not as I do. Or you can choose to live on the wild side with me. It's up to you. Now, I need 2 of these, one for the front of the head and one for the back. So I'm using this piece to trace a second one. And I'm going to set that aside for now. The traced piece is the front, and that's the one we're going to add the snout to. Now let's add the snout onto the front gore piece. Since the snout is centered on the face, I line it up with the center of the gore and trace it right on. I don't have to guess because the silhouette tells me what I need to know. But here's something I want you to notice. The snout line on the silhouette ends at the neckline. On the gore piece, that neckline is now this bottom point. So instead of stopping where the silhouette does, I'm going to extend that line down to connect with the bottom point of the gore. This is something that has to be kept in mind as we translate a flat drawing into 3D pattern pieces. The reference points move, and we have to remember and account for that. So that's the face piece at this stage. We'll come back to it again after the gusset is built, but first we have to build the gusset. That's where we get the extra 2 inches of width and shape the nose. Before I build the gusset, I need to know what it has to do. So back to the silhouette. On the front view, the nose is 1 3/8 inches. Now, remember our circle had a 5-inch diameter. So to get to 7 inches wide, we need to add 2 inches right here. It will be easier to understand and use these measurements if we move to the side view. I'll write the nose width over here on the side view, 1 3/8 on top, 1/2 inch on the bottom, which I also measured. And now the width we need to add changes depending on where we are on the head and which circle diameter we're working from. So around the face where the 5-inch diameter applies, the front and back of the head, we need to add 2 inches. At the top of the head and the neckline, we only need 1 inch because that's the 6-inch circle. Writing all of this onto the side silhouette means we can compare it directly to our face pattern piece and our gusset and know exactly where to add that width. Silhouette to the rescue again. Now I need to know how long the gusset has to be. And the best way to measure a curved edge like this is to walk along it in small increments. I'm making a mark every 1/2 inch along the face edge, and that one ended up being just over 12.5 inches. The back head piece came in at just over 10 inches. I'll draw the gusset on a folded piece of freezer paper. That fold becomes the center line of the gusset and my reference point for everything that comes next. I transfer those same markings along the fold so I know exactly where to add width at each point. That's where the gusset shape actually starts to take form. For the width, I go back to my silhouette and the measurements I added earlier. I'm looking at where each measurement sits on the face pattern piece and adding that same thickness to the corresponding spot on the gusset. Because I'm working on a fold, I only mark out 1/2 of that measurement from the fold at each point. So where the head needs to be 2 inches wide in a section, I'm marking 1 inch out from the fold. When I unfold it, it becomes the full width, and I know it's symmetrical without having to draw both sides separately. I'm working my way along those 1/2 inch marks, placing a width point when I need one and following what the silhouette is telling me. You can already start to see the shape of the gusset emerging from these dots. Once all the marks are in, I connect them, starting with straight lines and then smoothing them into gentle curves. Leaving straight lines and sharp edges between the marks gives you a shape with flat edges instead of a smooth curve, and you'll notice that in the finished head if you forget to do this. I'm keeping the nose as one piece for now rather than cutting it into sections because the fewer tiny pieces floating around the table at this stage, the better. I do not like it when I accidentally throw pieces away because they are so small. I'm labeling each section before we move on so none of us get disoriented or forget what the pieces are. The next step is checking that the gusset edge actually matches the face edge it's going to be sewn to. To do this, I'm adding perpendicular marks across the gusset at every inch mark and comparing those to the marks on the face edge at each point. We're checking that both edges are the same length. If the gusset is longer than the face edge at any spot, I need to add length to the face pattern. If it's shorter, that tells me a dart is needed there instead. Either way, any adjustment always happens on the face pattern piece. We never adjust the gusset. I'm writing the amount directly on the pattern with a plus or minus so I know at a glance what needs to happen and where. The only meaningful discrepancy that I'm finding is around the nose. I'm highlighting that section and cutting along these lines so I can open it up and iron a piece of freezer paper behind it to hold the new shape. I ended up adding 1/8 of an inch across 2 separate lines. I know that's not much, but we don't ignore discrepancies, even small ones. That's the front piece done. Now I'm repeating the whole process for the back head gusset, measuring, marking, connecting, smoothing. The back didn't need any adjusting, so that pattern is done. But before I sew anything up, there's one more thing I want to do, and this is purely about making construction easier. It's not really about design. Right now, the back gusset has a fold line running down the center, and I want a seam there instead so it matches the back seam of the body. It's going to make attaching the head much easier when we have to do that later. So I'm cutting up that fold line, swinging the bottom open just enough for a seam allowance, which is going to be about 1/2 of an inch to 3/4 of an inch, and ironing it flat onto a fresh piece of freezer paper. It's not going to change the look of the head in any noticeable way. This is purely to make our life easier down the road. Now it's just a matter of cutting all of this out of paper, sewing it up, and seeing how our silhouette translates into 3 dimensions. This is exciting. And here it is in all of its beautiful glory. Wow. Okay, let's compare it to the silhouette. I can see 2 things that I want to change. The nose is a little wider than I want, so I'll reduce the width of the gusset there on the next draft. And it's pointing slightly downward when I want it angled upward. So we need to adjust the face pattern for that one. That was only 2 things. I think everything else is where I want it. I like it. I think that's a pretty good first draft. This is the process. You sew it, compare it to your silhouette, find out what needs adjusting, and you make those changes. There's really no skipping this step, and there's no shame in needing more than 1 draft to get there. Let's put our draft away and get these pattern pieces back out. I'm really sorry about this next part. I accidentally cut these out without filming, so I'm kind of showing you here what I removed. It really wasn't a lot, but I removed a little from the gusset and a little from the nose. One thing that's worth noting is that if you're ever unsure about a change, trace your current pattern piece first and make the changes on the copy. Here is our second draft next to the silhouette. And this time, I really like it. I think it's cute. The nose is sitting at the right angle, the width feels right, and the proportions match the drawing. This head pattern is done. And now that we have it, there's a lot more we can do with this mouse. So let's talk about what's coming next. Okay, and that is the head gusset drafting process from start to finish. I really hope you learned something and that you take what you've learned and apply it to your own plush. This mouse is far from done. We've only talked about the head. We haven't addressed the ears yet, and we need to talk about the body still. More specifically, in the next video, we're going to talk about legs, how to design the body, and how to do integrated legs so that they are right inside the body pattern and there's no hand stitching the limbs on afterwards. Isn't that so exciting? So if you want the free mouse pattern, as soon as I get it done and as soon as I drop it, make sure you're subscribing so you don't miss it. And next week, we'll be talking about this body. I hope you're excited. This is going to be good. I'll see you next time.